Right before a rider hits the takeoff ramp, there's a moment they never forget. The engine finds its rhythm, the track narrows, and suddenly everything around them fades away. In that moment, fear disappears. All that's left is calculation, acceleration, trajectory, airtime, and then the ramp rises ahead like a wall you've already decided to break through. You open the throttle, the front wheel lifts, and for a few seconds the world becomes nothing but you. A motorcycle screaming forward at full speed, and gravity waiting to see what you'll do next. And at the very peak of the jump, a unique sensation hits. For a few seconds, you truly believe you can fly.
There's a moment when physics stops explaining and starts resisting. A jump stretching more than 185 feet, over 55 meters. A motorcycle floating on a moving wave. A maneuver so fast it needed slow motion just to be understood. Behind every one of those scenes, there's no trick. There's physics pushed to the edge, courage in its rawest form, and a real fight against the impossible. Because in one of the most brutal sports ever created, the laws of physics aren't just an obstacle. They're part of the game. What happens when a rider decides to face gravity like it's just another opponent? How does a 220-pound machine, 100 kilograms, become an extension of the human body and fly as if weight simply doesn't apply? And who are the riders who went so far? They made science look like fiction. To understand that, we need to go back to the beginning, when motocross was still chaos, and every jump was more instinct than engineering. Motocross was born from a simple truth. When you put a motorcycle on uneven ground, physics stops being theory. It becomes impact, vibration, a direct fist fight between rider and terrain. In the early days, there were no groomed tracks, no rules, no sophisticated engineering, just pioneers turning holes, bumps, and mud into a laboratory. Every jump was a test, every landing an experiment. Every mistake had immediate consequences. Over time, that chaos turned into science. Tracks became more aggressive, with ramps capable of launching riders 30 feet high, around 10 meters, and 80 feet long, 25 meters. Jumps that look simple on paper, but load the human body with up to 4 Gs on impact. For comparison, a Formula One driver might feel around 5 Gs during a brutal braking zone. A motocross rider gets close to that, every single time the tires touch the ground. To survive that abuse, the machine had to evolve. A modern motocross bike weighs around 220 to 240 pounds, 100 to 110 kilograms. But the secret isn't the weight, it's what it can take. Suspension with over 12 inches of travel, 300 plus millimeters, built to absorb forces that would destroy any street bike. Every piece of the frame, every axle, every bearing exists to survive landings that would bend wheels and crack forks on a normal motorcycle. These machines aren't designed for comfort. They're designed to withstand physics. But none of that matters once the wheels leave the dirt. In the air, the bike becomes an unstable projectile. And the only force preventing disaster is the rider, adjusting body position, shifting center of gravity, correcting angle with throttle or rear brake, all in fractions of a second. The line between a perfect jump and a brutal crash can be a single wrong movement. And as the sport evolved, some riders realized that speed wasn't enough. They had to understand what happened between the ground and the machine. Names like Jeremy McGrath in Supercross and James Stewart in modern motocross took that idea so seriously. They ended up changing the sport forever. And between the raw brutality of outdoor motocross and the engineered precision of Supercross, one truth emerged. If some riders can shape physics, then who are the ones who pushed it so far that gravity stopped making sense? If you want to understand how far a human can push a motorcycle, you only need to look at these riders. Each one took the laws of physics and turned them into fuel, creating numbers that shouldn't be real. And the first to do it in a way that looked impossible was Robbie Maddison, when he rode a motorcycle on top of a massive, fast-moving ocean wave, constantly shifting and violently unstable. In the Pipe Dream project, people thought it was CGI, but it wasn't. To keep the bike afloat, Maddison needed to maintain at least 40 miles per hour, about 65 kilometers per hour. Anything less, and the bike would sink instantly. The water's drag hit the chassis like a solid wall, and the only way to stay upright was to shift his weight with surgical precision every single second. But water wasn't enough for Maddison, so he went after gravity. On the steep descent of a ski jump in Utah, the angle was so extreme the bike accelerated like it was falling. At the final launch, Maddison was doing over 60 miles per hour, 100 kilometers per hour, and the margin for correction in the air was practically zero, a single degree off, and he wouldn't land in line. He'd land in freefall. While Maddison was pushing the limits of gravity, another rider was proving how absolute control can turn any massive jump into something that feels like it breaks logic. Axell Hodges. At high speed, Hodges launches off huge ramps and pulls off moves where the bike stays steady, even during rotations that should throw an ordinary rider completely off balance. In the air, he uses a mix of throttle control, rear brake taps, and precise body positioning to keep the bike settled, not with dramatic movements, but with clean, calculated micro-adjustments. Each correction happens in fractions of a second. Physics says that combination of forces should create instability. Hodges answers with control. He lands long jumps absorbing the impact as if he were touching down on flat ground, getting back on the throttle without losing traction. In every flight, he shows that mastering a bike isn't just about power or courage. It's about understanding how to work with physics instead of fighting it. And if Maddison and Hodges operated on the edge between control and collapse, Travis Pastrana went even further, literally. When he landed the first double backflip in history, he proved that a rider could rotate a 220-pound bike, 100 kilograms, twice in the air without losing axis. The jump sent him roughly 40 feet high, about 12 meters, with enough speed on takeoff to launch his body like a catapult. And even a 0.3-second delay in rotation meant certain disaster. It wasn't instinct. It was applied physics at the absolute limit. But after redefining the sport, Pastrana wasn't done. He decided to try something no engineer or physicist believed was possible: the double backflip 360 degrees. On his private training compound, he spent hours testing rotation speed, approach angle, and throttle timing. Every attempt showed the same dilemma: rotate too far, and he'd lose the axis. Rotate too little, and he'd drop like an anchor. It was a trick that should not have worked, and still, Pastrana kept pushing. With each jump, he tweaked trajectory, spin rate, and weight distribution until he found a combination that defied everything on paper. And then, after multiple attempts, he did the impossible. He landed the first double backflip 360 degrees ever recorded. And while Pastrana proved physics could be bent through rotation, another rider was about to show that it could also be bent through speed, timing, and absolute precision in the air. 2003. Stewart approached the ramp with the bike completely leaned. At the lip, instead of going up, he scrubbed the jump. He threw the bike sideways, shaved off aerodynamic lift, and stayed glued to the ground. The crowd thought he messed up, but he landed with extra speed, because in motocross, airtime is lost time. Whoever touches the ground first accelerates first. That moment gave birth to the Bubba Scrub, a technique so radical it had to be analyzed in super slow motion. It was the closest anyone had come to hacking gravity. And while Stewart dominated the air, Jeremy McGrath dominated the dirt. In Supercross, and with triples stretching 60 to 75 feet, 18 to 22 meters, brutal whoops, and perfectly shaped berms, McGrath redefined what technique meant. His riding looked simple, but it was pure physics: weight balance, body positioning, rhythm, and precision that made the impossible look easy. He didn't win just because he was fast. He won because he understood how to bend physics without breaking it. These riders didn't just challenge motocross. They proved that impulse, rotation, inertia, aerodynamics, and rhythm can be pushed so far. They stop being limits and start becoming fuel. But this leaves one question: what happens when motocross combines all those forces at the same time to create a jump that shouldn't exist, but does? When you combine impulse, rotation, aerodynamics, inertia, and courage, something unexpected happens. Motocross doesn't just create a jump, it creates a paradox. Because on paper, many of these jumps simply shouldn't work. Physics sets clear boundaries. Bikes have weight, air creates resistance, and the human body has finite reaction time. Nothing about that should allow a perfect jump. But someone always tries, because motocross is built on extreme challenges. And when they try, the truth becomes brutally simple. A jump only exists because the rider accepts operating at a level where any mistake has consequences. That's where motocross separates itself from every other sport. A jump demands enough speed for stability, but not so much that it becomes uncontrollable. It demands a trajectory measured to the inch, on terrain that's never identical twice. It demands mid-air calculations that no engineer could predict with perfect accuracy on the ground. For a few seconds, the motorcycle stops being just a machine and becomes an extension of what the rider believes is possible. And here's the answer to the question. When all those forces converge, motocross reveals its harshest and most beautiful truth. The limit isn't the bike. It isn't the track. It isn't physics. The limit is whoever has the courage to face it. And as long as there's someone willing to accelerate toward the impossible, there will always be a new jump waiting, a jump no one should attempt, but someone inevitably will. After watching all of this, answer me one thing in the comments. If you had the chance to try one of these jumps, which one would you pick? And which one would you never attempt? Not even for $1 million? If this video kept you hooked, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That tells the algorithm you want more insane stories like this. And hey, there's another video on your screen right now. Click it and I'll meet you there. Keep exploring. The world doesn't stop, and neither do we.